So I just played a game that's incredibly difficult to describe, called the Valley. Not the Valley. I want to call it the Valley. I may call it the Valley a few times during this review, but just know that I'm calling it. It's the actual name is just Valley, and right now it's on Steam sale for the weekend for $10 till February 13th. I want to start off by saying that I actually really enjoyed this game. Total playtime, start to finish, with near 100% completion, is 4 hours, roughly. Um, and the reason I want to start by burying the lead and saying that I enjoy this game is because everything I'm about to say is going to sound like I'm bashing it. So Valley self-identifies as a first-person action adventure game that touts the use of a like runny, jumpy, swingy suit called the Leaf suit, and that suit is instrumental to the gameplay in your adventure. However, the game itself has a lot of things that make it less action adventure and more walking simulator. Where they went out of the way to make the walking really awesome, it feels like that's the majority of what you're doing. So, for those not familiar with what a walking simulator is, it's a term used to describe a type of game where the player experiences a story that's fed to them without much impact on the outcome, and whose main purpose is to go from one point to the next to move the narrative along. There isn't any real fear of death. There's no puzzles per se. There's no obstacles of note. And the protagonist has little to no impact on the outcome of the story. And the issue that I have with the game is that last sentence sums up Valley pretty well. Let's start with the touted Leaf suit. In the game, the narrative in the game is an experimental suit. It gives you awesome run, jump, swing, double jump, wall walk powers. Later on during the game, you can like skip across the water, and it helps you get around the valley in Valley. It's powered by these life orbs, which is actual like life. It's supposed to be the essence of life on the island that you're on, and it is also your life. So, for example, if someone hits you, it causes your life force to go down. But also, when you double jump, it causes your life force to go down. And the game introduces it as if there's some type of precious resource that'll need to be conserved. Like there's some penalty if you double jump too often, or if you're in we'll call them a fight with like an angry beehive, because that's what you fight a lot in this game, angry beehives. That you'd be in trouble if you use your maneuvers and then also shoot at them, because what you shoot out is also life force. And the way to replenish it is to either find it in the open, just kind of being all life forcey, or to suck the life out of a tree or a deer. And they sell it when the concept is first introduced as this moral dilemma that you're going to be facing throughout the game. It even gives you a little gauge to the health of the valley, saying, hey, there's not enough life in the valley sustained. You're sucking all the life out of it. Except that this resource is not at all rare. Like the island is teeming with it. It's literally sweating life force. And outside of the introduction of it as a resource, there is never a reason to actually suck life out of a tree or a deer in order to do it. It's the stuff is just everywhere. And you also find these Metroid style tank upgrades throughout the game. And by the time I was done, I had like, I'm going to say 75,000 tanks worth of life force that I could have on me at any time. They were never, ever are you going to run out of it in a game. And with so much life force, you'll never die from the enemies or using your abilities, because when you're done with a fight, and again, the fight is very mad. I'm not even gonna get into it. You just shoot, you go pew 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 with the life force, and when you pew 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 something 3 times, it dies, and that's the scope of your fighting. And that creates a thing where the enemies aren't gonna kill you, and you overusing your abilities aren't gonna kill you. Well, then the only real threat to you is falling into water. And when you do fall into water, you do die. And when you die, you're resurrected because of quantum immortality, which is just kind of a shoehorn thing into the game because, convenient plot devices. So you're just resurrected. But you being resurrected is supposed to also suck life from the valley. And again, more dilemma, stop dying. But you can restore life to the valley just by shooting dead trees with life force again. And there's so much life force that if you ever fall into the water, you go pew pew to a tree and you've restored the valley. So, with the exception, like for me, for my 4 hour run through, with the exception of the story scripted death, because they introduced the death mechanic on an unavoidable fall crossing a bridge, I only died 2 times. So, not counting that, that would have been 3 times. So, not counting the time the game made me die, I only died twice. So, there's no fear of death in this game. And there's no real death penalty either because both times that I fell into the water and died, they put you right where you fell. So, you just kind of back up and jump again. Except this time to double jump better. There are small attempts in this game at giving you puzzles, but all of their puzzles are the same, which is find a dead tree, shoot a dead tree, and a door opens. They're collectibles. You collect acorns and artifacts to open up a temple towards the end of the game, and they're almost all along the way. I tried to do as much exploring as possible. There's very little payoff to exploration, and just about everything you need to find is very close to the beaten path. So, with that, that probably sounds like, hey, there's nothing going on in this game. It seems really easy, and the game is really easy. I'll give it to you, it's easy. But the thing is that it's fun because while I would call it a walking simulator in that way, it made the walking incredible because all of the runny, jumpy, swingy parts in this game give you a real sense of speed and motion and kind of pull you into the game. I really wish that it had VR support because I could imagine this game in VR would one give you immediate motion sickness because you're moving so fast, but also just be so immersive because if they could give you that sense of speed without that level of immersion of a VR headset, I can only imagine and are left to imagine because again it's not for VR. How awesome it would be. The game is essentially a guided tour of a story, and it's a story that I'm not going to get into because I want to leave it spoiler free, as it's not the greatest story in the world, but it's a serviceable story and one that you'll be interested in, if not just a little filled with generic character archetypes. But other than that, it's fun to go through, and you actually find that the story. It's one of those. Maybe Myst style or a Bioshock style stories where everything's happened and you've shown up to find out what happened. But instead of having to find all of the audio tapes, you kind of find all of the audio tapes as soon as you find like at the beginning, you walk in, there's a truck, there's all the audio tapes. And instead of listening to all the audio tapes at once, they play automatically when you get to parts of the valley where it's important to the plot to hear that specific audio tape. So in that way, it really is just a fun story delivering system. Unless again, that action adventure moniker I feel like is a little much. And I would love to see if someone took kind of the core traversal system of this game and applied it to something maybe a little more consequential in terms of enemy encounters, puzzles, and even just jumping puzzles. Because most of the jumping puzzles in this game were pretty simple too. Jump, forward, double jump, etc. So that's my take on Valley. So if you enjoyed this little summary, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe. Don't comment, don't like, just subscribe. Subscribe's the part that counts. This has been No Right Answers Gaming.